Great. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us at this event to introduce the new MAPS consumer brand. My name is Philip Wood, and I'm going to be guiding you through the session today. Hopefully, you've managed to take advantage of the networking functionality in your tables. Hopefully, we'll have a bit more time as well at the end of the session if you want to carry on talking with other attendees. I'm shortly going to hand over to our CEO, Caroline Sharkovich, but before I do, I just wanted to flag that you can ask questions as we go throughout the session using the box to the right-hand side of your screen, and you can also upvote questions other people have asked to give us, help give us an idea of what you want to hear from us, and we'll have a session at the end to answer as many of these as possible, so please do keep them coming in. So I'm now going to invite Caroline up onto the stage to introduce and welcome you to today's session. Might just take a second or two for her to join. So while we wait, I'll also draw your attention to the fact we have a chat function as well, again on the right-hand side of your screens. This is where you can add comments as we go along, and it would be great to get a bit of conversation going, and we'd be really interested to hear your thoughts as we move throughout the session. I can see Caroline's now up on stage with me, so over to you, Caroline.
Thanks very much, Phil. So in the world of digital living, which we've all been doing now for over a year, actually, this is a platform I've so a little while to find my way around it. But I have to say, it's set out and people populating the tables as you're coming online actually was something that took me back to the days where you'd stand in a conference hall and you'd soon fill up. So it was a really nice reminder of how it used to feel when you'd see people coming to an event. Anyway, I wanted to first of all thank you very much for joining us today. This is a really significant day for MAPS. And I'm delighted to be here for the beginning of it anyway, to welcome you. And so many people have joined online, and I know we're probably going to have some more people joining as we go through the next hour or so. So I think what I just wanted to set out really was how I think this consumer brand is really going to take MAPS forward to the next stage, part of our journey. So MAPS was formed, as you know, just a little over 2 years ago, and it was bringing three organisations together, so three separate organisations: the Money Advice Service, the Pensions Advisory Service, and PensionWise. Can we just click on to the next slide? Can we get to the next? Go. So, three separate brands, which have been the consumer-facing brands and also are embedded in a lot of our partners' works in partnership and syndicate content, and also where people can go to access those different services that are provided. But you know, the vision for MAPS is that actually we are here to help everyone with their money and pensions, and in terms of having something that made sense, that actually worked in the consumer space, it was really important that whilst we remain the money and pension service to our staff, to the government departments, to our sponsoring body, the DWP, to many of our stakeholders, what we wanted to do was to make sure that we've got a distinct consumer-facing brand and a single brand of how we would present ourselves to those people and the services that we could provide to those consumers in a much more joined up and holistic way. One of the things we know is that money matters are very often complex, and in the pension space, that's particularly so. But even during the past year, as we've been going through the COVID pandemic, we've seen many people who have got worries and concerns about their money and their pensions, but they don't always know where to go. So bringing services together at MAPS into a single new brand means that we're going to be able to empower those people who can come to MAPS and actually find the help and support and the guidance that they need, whether that be in advance of actually going out to talk to a financial advisor or about their pensions or their finances, or whether it's about actually finding out information that helps them feel more in control and can actually help them identify the options that they have for their particular issue that they have. So what we want to do in short is have a much simpler route for consumers to make it easier for them, and for our partners to make it easier for them too, to access a clear joined up service. So we've been working pretty hard, flat out. Actually, the team have been working incredibly hard, pulling together something that would actually work. There's been lots of stages in this journey, and so I'm really pleased to be part of today where we're actually about to reveal the big reveal. I don't get to do revealing the big reveal. That's going to come a little bit later from one of my colleagues. But really important sort of thing for me to stress is that, what matters to us is that we can make a difference for people. So we're here for everyone to help them with their money and pensions. But actually what we can do in terms of helping people achieve good, strong outcomes is really important to us. And I think what this new brand will do is to really galvanize the services that MAPS can provide. And as I say, our partners can refer into in the confidence that actually we are going to be completely focused on improving consumer outcomes. And also what it will do, of course, is to support our own corporate strategy, of which I said the vision is to let everyone make the most of their money and pensions, and also feeding in, of course, to the UK financial wellbeing strategy. So once again, I'm absolutely delighted that so many of you can be here today with us to mark this moment. But before I just want to hand back over to Phil, I just wanted to thank all of my colleagues, both in the business and also those other partners that we've been working with to get to this place where we can actually launch our new and exciting consumer brand. So I'll pass back over to you now, Phil, and I hope that the rest of the session is really interesting and informative, and I look forward to seeing some of the chat. And please use that chat function, because it's one of the things is really important in these digital environments is to keep the talk and the chatter coming so that we can really feed off that and drive the energy. So thanks very much, and over to you, Phil.
Thanks very much, Caroline. So that sets us up really nicely for the rest of the session. I'm now going to invite Paul Taylor, our Chief Marketing Officer, to come and join us up on stage. Paul's going to talk us through the journey to our new brand and, most importantly, reveal to you all what that brand is. So we'll just bring Paul up on stage now. Just while we're waiting, as Caroline said, I think there's some chat and questions coming through, which is great. Just remind you to keep those coming throughout the session, and we'll try and answer as many of those at the end as possible. Over to you, Paul.
Well, thank you, Phil. So great. So, I'm in the enviable position of being able to talk through the new brand. And just before I talk to you about that, what I want to do is just go through the journey that our new brand has been on. So what we want to do is go back, look at some of the research, understand what consumers said about the brand, and then we'll show you the new brand and some of the background behind it. So if we go on to the next slide. Brilliant, thank you. So this is a process that started way before COVID came along, probably about 18 months ago now. And what we did is, the first thing we did is really to understand the territories and the best territories for the new consumer brand to operate in. And what we did is we looked at some existing brands that we had, so Money and Pension Service, PensionWise, also Talk Money from the Talk Money Week that we do. And then we put in there some new brands as well to understand how different elements worked, and really so we could come up with something that worked the absolute best for the consumer. And we looked at that on a spectrum. On the left-hand side, you've got functional, which are practical in purpose. On the right-hand side, you've got emotional, that are supportive in intent. And what we found from looking at different elements of these brands, there were positives that came through in all areas. On the emotional side, let's sort that. Now that's better. They talk to people in a really human way, and people responded very well to that. But they weren't without their failings. So a couple of the failings in this space were when we didn't talk about money, it was actually really hard for people to understand what space they operated in. So that didn't work well. And also when you see these brands, you've got let's sort that, now that's better. And what consumers thought, they're actually slightly grounded in a negative way. And what we found is people didn't like to see negatives, because even though they may be struggling with their finances, they didn't want to be reminded of that. So framing it in the negative was really not a good place to be. On the left-hand side, you've got functional. And the Money and Pension Service obviously works very well. It clearly says that we're in the money space. However, whereas the ones on the right had a softer edge and a more approachable manner. Money and Pension Service, the feedback we got is it sounds like a government body. So this was a bit too severe to make it approachable for consumers. Worked great in the B2B space, but for consumers, less so, less approachable. In the middle, there was a fusion of that functional and emotional. So you've got the wise family, and people really like the positivity of the wisdom, so pension-wise and saving-wise and debt-wise. However, some of those brands are taken, so we couldn't operate in that space, but that was one that worked well. Again, money savvy. They liked the fact that they could come here. It's clearly about money, and being made more savvy was a good place to be as well. And then MoneyHelper as well. MoneyHelper clearly says money and help. And again, that's something that fusion between the emotional and the functional worked really well in this space. Next slide, please. So when we spoke to consumers, the feedback that we got is the brand had to work in 4 different ways. The first one, comprehension. So do I get maps? Do I understand what maps does? The second one is empathy. Do they get me? And also, I don't want them to judge me. So, I really want them to have that empathy for me and my situation. Expertise. So both do maps know what they're doing, but also the partners, those that refer to us and those that we introduce. People told us that they wanted to do it for themselves. They wanted to be shown and guided and supported and helped, but they didn't want to have it done for themselves. So that was a really key insight that we got. So if we go to the next slide. Okay. So when we distilled back all of that consumer research, we had one core insight. So ultimately, people needed to feel like they'd progressed and moved on, and after they'd engaged with maps, they felt more equipped to make better financial decisions. And what we had from the first round of research is we actually did have a real clear favourite. But what we did is we drilled down into that middle territory. We looked at a number of different options, and then we tested them again. We basically stress tested the preferred option again. And then we did a third round of research. And again, we looked at, well, how does this work with our squeeze segment, our cushion segment, and our struggling segment? How does it work in the devolved nations? How does it work in different age groups? But again, there was a clear favourite. So I'm delighted to reveal, if we click on to the next slide, that the new consumer brand for the Money and Pension Service is MoneyHelper. If we move on to the next slide. So I just want to touch on some of the reasons why MoneyHelper worked better, significantly better than all of the other brands. Firstly, the name was unambiguous. Clearly you can see MoneyHelper. There is no getting away from the fact that we operate in the money space and we're here to help and support you. Also, Helper, as I said, it's probably softer than some of the brands that we've previously used and softer than our corporate identity. But what that meant is people could really relate to it and it felt much more approachable. It was personable. It had a human note. The third point is it didn't pigeonhole the organization. And by that, I mean, it works if you need crisis support, but if you also need prevention guidance, it also works. The interesting thing is when we looked at MoneyHelp, actually that did pigeonhole it in the crisis space. And for those who weren't in crisis, the brand didn't work. But when you soften it out, when you put in MoneyHelper, and it sounds more of a coach or a guide, it worked really, really well. And that worked with people who had money difficulties, but also those that were looking to maximize income or prevent money difficulties. And then the final point is the semiotics of the arrow. So what we found from the research is that when we put the arrow and we guided people towards something, it really resonated, and it said, look, this is about moving forwards. This is about taking me from this situation that I am, and it's moving me forwards either with us or with partners. If we go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. And from this research, and from the 3 rounds of research we did with consumers, we came up with a core brand idea. And that brand idea was clarity that empowers. What, as I said earlier, what people really wanted was not for us to do it for them, but to provide them with the clarity, and that would encourage and empower them to move forward and make better financial decisions. And if anybody's seen the new Pension-Wise Creative, you can see that narrative coming through strongly in there. It's about, in that instance, providing clarity around pensions and then empowering you to move forwards to make better financial decisions on your pension. And on the right-hand side, you can see a real simple graphic that says A to B with an arrow. And what people said to us is, look, when I'm confused or when I'm uncertain, I just want to be nudged, pointed, guided, and sent to that point B. And that point B was, not necessarily an end point, but the start of a trajectory towards an end point. And whether that was, coming to a part of our service that could help you, or whether that was being handed off to us, or whether that was handing off to some of you, our partners, then that's what they wanted. And they wanted to move forward in a really positive way to do that. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to hand you back to Phil, and Eileen's going to talk about how some of this really comes to life in the consumer world and some of the timings of that.
Very much for that. So now that we've had the big reveal, do start sending in any questions you've got. And just to flag, I can see that there are a couple of people on the event who've been having a few tech issues. We do have some support in the room, so they should hopefully be coming in and helping out if you've got any issues, but do flag if you can't hear or see anything, and we'll try and help you as quickly as possible. So before we open up for questions, I've been joined on the stage by Eileen Beverill, who's our Chief Digital and Information Officer at MAPS, and Eileen's going to just give us an idea of how the MoneyHelper brand will look in action before chairing question and answer sessions. So do start sending in those questions for Eileen and Paul to get to after this next bit. Thanks very much.
Okay, so good afternoon, and thank you, Phil, for introducing me. That's very kind. So Paul has covered how we've got to the point of where we are now with our new exciting brand, MoneyHelper. As Phil said, I'm just going to take you through briefly how we're actually going to bring that brand to life. As Caroline has detailed, MAPS will remain our corporate brand, and how we engage with our partners, industry stakeholders and employees. And MoneyHelper, provided by the Money and Pension Service, will be how the consumers see and access our services. If we could go on to the next slide, please. So the top level categories describing our services describing the services we provide will exist. And you can see those on this graphic here underneath MoneyHelper. What is shown here is just a flavour of what we plan to put in place. And we will continue to update you as stakeholders as these evolve. These are just example ones at the moment, but hopefully you can start to see the sort of layering underneath the MoneyHelper brand. We could go on to the next slide, please. There are currently a number of MAPS touch points. Firstly, the website, so that's displayed here. You can start to see some of the new design and kind of how our consumers will see the website and the brand actually in action when it's launched. In terms of the website, we've approached the changes to this by taking the very best of what we currently provide on our existing 3 sites and presenting this in a much more sort of simplified, easier sort of way in terms of being able to access and navigate through the services that we offer, and we've very much looked at kind of reducing duplication for the consumer and really kind of simplifying the service for them. Our new technology platform that we've put in place will, as a further future phase, allow us to kind of personalize and really improve that customer experience further, both when they come to Maps and also when we link out to others. As well as the website, we have printed guides. So we can go on to the next slide, please. So this is what our printed guides will look like. They will all be updated into the new brand, and hopefully be reassured that the ordering process will continue as it currently is. There's a slide further on which kind of details how we will connect you with that service. If we could go on to the next slide, please. So pension-wise, as Paul detailed, and I think you'll have seen that in his presentation, will remain as a service. Clearly identifiable. The existing creative that we have is working well, so our plan is not to replace that, but it will actually evolve to fit within the new MoneyHelper branding. We could go on to the next one, please. Okay, so next steps. This is probably what people are keen to hear about. So in terms of our transition plans, we're looking to make this as sort of seamless for you as our partners and stakeholders as we possibly can. The existing websites will continue until the launch date. And then, as I said, the consolidation of those will result in improvements rather than changes. Links from our legacy sites will be redirected to the new website, to the equivalent pages. And on a practical level, the existing websites will feature a banner which will notify our visitors that the site will soon switch over in advance of it actually switching over. And our guiders in our contact centres will ensure that those contacting us will be alerted in advance of the upcoming changes. In terms of the printed guides, you can see here that between April and June, we will have reruns, and then from June onwards, the MoneyHelper printed guides will be available for you to order. We are obviously dependent on you all as stakeholders, and we've been engaging with as many of you as we can up to this point in time. And we're looking to you to help us kind of cascade the changes to your stakeholders and subsequently into the sort of audiences and users that we have. So we'll be publishing a toolkit to actually make sure you've got the assets that you need to be able to do that effectively. When the brand actually launches, we intend to launch a consumer campaign, and that again will help to build awareness and help people kind of connect with the new brand. If you're unsure about any of this, it does detail on the slide here. These will be available to you, who you can contact to make sure that you get the support that you need. And Phil is on the call with us and he'll be able to take any questions in relation to that. So next slide, please. So as Caroline and Paul have detailed, we're really delighted to have shared with you the new consumer brand that's going to take Maps forward onto the next stage of our journey, making sure we provide the one destination that will allow people to find and access free money and pension support, and really providing that guidance to those most in need. So just to sum up before we take questions, as Caroline said, as key stakeholders, we thank you very much for joining us. We really want to work closely with you and support you as we go forward on this journey together. And I'll now be joined by Paul, and we're happy to take any questions that anybody has.
And again, Eileen, just to flag to people, so the question functionality is on the right of your screen.
Okay.
I think we're waiting for a few questions to come in, so do ask away while we've got Eileen and Paul here. Also, just to repeat from earlier, I'm aware some people have had tech issues. Hopefully we've got the tech support on that and helping you through that, so fingers crossed. But we are recording the session, so if anyone wasn't able to access it, we will circulate the link for that round when we send further comms as a follow-up to today. So if all else fails, we will have a recording that you can watch back.
Okay.
We've got a question now coming in, Eileen, so I'll hand back to you guys.
Yeah, so I think maybe you can take the first one for us, actually, Phil. When will we receive the toolkit so we can update our own websites, please?
Yeah, so there's probably a couple of things for everyone to look out for. So after this session, we'll have a web page going up live on the MAPS website, just detailing further information about the new consumer brand, some FAQs just to help give people some more information, which we'll be updating as we go along. We will be sending out an email linking to that to everyone who's on today's session, but also everyone who got the original invite. The toolkit itself should be following next week, and that will just give some further information about the changes, the rationale behind the brand, and also detailing any changes you might need to make as stakeholders, and also how you can help us in communicating out that brand to your networks as well.
Brilliant, thank you, Phil. If I can pass the next one over to you, Paul, if that's okay. So for pension providers that signpost to MAPS, how do they need to change their approach following the rebrand? How long will they have to do so?
So, there's no immediate risk. Any existing legacy link that clicks through to a page will be redirected through to the new service. So, if you particularly go through to a link on TPAS or PensionWise, that'll automatically be redirected to the equivalent page on the new service. Then what we're going to do through our partnerships team, through Phil's area, and people within my team, is just work with stakeholders and really, measure that process and help and support you and make the changes that are needed in the longer term. But we've got quite a long lead time, probably 6 to 12 months to make those changes happen.
Thank you, Paul. The next question is, thank you very much. Is the MoneyHelper brand in the public domain as of today? So yes, is the answer to that question. The next one is, will TPAS and MAS brands no longer exist? Paul, do you want to take that one?
I'll take that one as well. Yeah, so they will exist up until MoneyHelper goes live. So when MoneyHelper goes live, any legacy guidance that sits on TPAS and MAS will come under MoneyHelper. On that same day, TPAS and MoneyHelper will cease to exist as separate brands and separate websites. However, redirects will still exist. We appreciate there will need to be a period of time to change those brands over through printed material, etc. So for a period of time, they will exist as redirects, but they won't exist as a service. And what we're going to do in the interim is highlight on those legacy brands, TPAS, MAS, and PensionWise, that MoneyHelper is coming. And then when MoneyHelper arrives, we'll also highlight that this is a redirect from TPAS, MAS, or PensionWise, depending on what link you originally came from.
Just to jump in there as well. So the new MoneyHelper brand and website will go live from June. That's when we'll begin rolling out those two things. So just to flag, the purpose of today's session is to obviously give you as key stakeholders and partners advanced sight of what those changes will be. So come June, like I say, you're in a strong position.
Okay. I've got another one, probably for you, Paul, sorry. Is there a risk of customer confusion between the PensionWise brand and the MoneyHelper pensions?
When we've researched it, that there hasn't been confusion. We have specifically looked at that. As we've said, we're going to transition from the legacy websites and brands into the new brand. So we will tee customers up in the coming weeks for a period of at least 6 or 7 weeks. So we don't anticipate that.
Okay. And then we've got one about, how does the MoneyHelper service fit into the market as a central go-to point, which then signposts as required to specific services as a provider of services or as something else? So I can probably answer that one. What we are doing at the moment is developing further our kind of customer strategy. And as part of looking at that, obviously, to sort of exercise our function, we have to have regards to our objectives to provide support, guidance, and advice to those most in need and vulnerable. We also have clear outcomes in the UK strategy, and we propose to use those to make sure that we're, delivering things that we specifically MAPS do need to provide. However, there are a range of models. Obviously, we can provide comprehensive guidance, and at certain points, we would be the first point of contact. But other points, we would very much be signposting, and potentially in the future, we might actually look to actually white label as well. Yes, it's a journey we're going on as an organisation, and I think, you know, we're working with you as stakeholders to make sure that we look at that range of models and make sure you know, we serve the consumer in the most effective way, and point out to other services when it's relevant for MAPS not to be offering those because they already exist in the market. Okay, next one. A quick website search shows a different MoneyHelper website. How do we protect consumers from this? Paul?
Yeah. So, yeah, this is an interesting one. I think you know, we've done a lot of work, particularly with the debt sector. The real difficulty in this area is you have a lot of copycat brands who jump in to the market, lead gens, short periods of time, build up, and then they get taken out. I know from talking to the debt sector, they describe it as whack-a-mole, where they have to literally talk to the ASA and others to get these organisations taken out because they're copycatting that. So, you know, it's a really unfortunate place for this sort of area of financial services. So, you know, we've done some really good work with the ASA. We'll continue to work with them and the regulators to where there are mimicking brands, get them removed. So that's where we are.
Okay, thank you. The next question is quite a practical one. Is the idea that we should order a smaller batch of printed guides in April and then reorder in June? I think simply yes, the answer is yes to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Will you look at launching and deploying the rebrand in one big bang across digital and print platforms, or in stages?
Okay.
Want to do that, Paul?
Can I say that? Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah, in effect, it will be in one big bang. What we have is this issue, particularly a Google issue, that if you continue to run similar content in duplicate, you'll effectively delete both or all of the websites. So what we have to do is turn the legacy sites off and launch the new sites. And as I said earlier, but we will tee people up that this is coming, and then post-launch we will highlight that this is these used to be the legacy brands and you've come through to this. On the pension-wise side, obviously, we're going to use the same creative, and we're going to bring the new brand into that as a service from MoneyHelper. And so there'll be a softer transition there.
Okay, there's one around design. Sorry, I'm passing them your way, Paul, but this is to do with the brand as well. What will you do with the arrow image between money and helper if the title has to be expressed on a single line?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and we have got alternatives to that. And what we've also looked at is MoneyHelper on one line, and then the arrow coming down and nudging into the subcategory. So if it's pensions or debt or etc. So there are alternatives. You know, we haven't gone into all of that detail here, but that's definitely something that we can add as part of the wider pack when we take that out.
Okay, thank you. The next one is, will everything fit within the categories you mentioned? Homes, pensions, work and savings that I saw. I can probably answer that one. So we have designed a new information architecture for the new site, and the labelling basically should overlay against those kind of top level headings that I detailed, and they will you know, evolve as we kind of evolve the service. So when we start to share the literature with you, you'll start to see some of the categories and get a better view on those. What steps are being, so this one
I think there's a few in here.
yeah,
is it just practical things like phone numbers and content, you know, so I think we can probably bucket those all in one place. You know, at the moment the existing phone numbers will remain and they will go through. Obviously things like IVRs will change and have the new brand reflected in them. You know, the guidance content that we have will be moved across. We're going to edit that for style and tone, but the you know, the pages and the types of guidance will still be the same. In the pension space, it's slightly different, because often, for those who operate in the pensions market, we'll see this. Often TPAS, MAS and PensionWise will be almost in competition with each other. Obviously, you can't do that on one website, so there will be some bringing together of those guides. We're not going to get rid of anything, but we will take out that duplication. So I think the simple thing is that everything that you have today, whether it's printed guides or digital or phone numbers, will all come across, and then that will form a platform that we then go forward to build a better service on top of.
Yeah, so just to build out on that as well, Paul, I can see a few around sort of directories and tools. The directories and tools will be migrated over, and they will be under the new branding. So they will look as if they're part of the service, but they will still have the same titles and kind of labeling, so that, you know, the consumer can identify with them effectively. So they will still be available.
Yeah.
I think we may have answered everything on here now. Is there anything you can spot, Paul or Phil, that we feel we haven't?
Can't see anything at the moment.
No. There's something around staff morale and well-being. I'm not avoiding that question. I'm just not quite sure what the question means. What steps are being taken to address on the money advice contract? If people do want more information on that, and not, because I'm not able to answer it now, please do sort of, you know, drop, there's, as I say, a contact address. So please do drop, you know, a further ask into us, and we'll make sure that we do answer that. Yeah,
there is a question here about how much one of the tools is used, and do we have any plans to update that and develop it under the new branding?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, some of the stuff that Eileen has particularly touched on is that what it means coming together as one brand means we can come up with a better technical infrastructure, and we can build better products and better customer journeys on top of that infrastructure. So that should mean that we can move much more rapidly and not operate 3 different websites with different guidance and different tools. So I don't know about that specific tool, but going forward, yes, it puts us in a much better place to develop our propositions.
I think that might be all of the questions, guys. As I say, probably just one that we couldn't answer. Probably just need a little bit more detail on that if somebody still would like that answered. So I think if there's nothing else, I will wrap us up. No, I can't see anything else coming in. So just to say, you know, thank you again to everybody for joining this session. Thank you for those that have worked with us so far in making sure we're sort of getting our stakeholder and partner engagement right. You know, Phil and his team will continue to be working on that over the next few months, and really making sure people get the support that they need as we sort of start to transition onto the new brand. I will wish everyone a very good day. Thank you for your support, and please do stay in touch with us. And thank you, Paul, if you didn't want to add anything else.
No, just to say that we'll be in touch going forwards through the various comms team to come up with the next stage and our partner packs.
Yeah, brilliant. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Phil, for hosting us. Thank you, Caroline.